Dennis Callan, thank you so much for coming down to ThinkTech.
Thank you for inviting me, Jay.
So you're in the travel business and you do a lot of video.
Right.
And we want to hear about the special bus you've got going.
Well, it's quite a bus. It's not my bus. I wish it were my bus, but it's the Chinese. You know, it figures a country of 1 billion people packed into those huge cities, they've got a lot of problems on their hands and a lot of well-educated people. So the Chinese have come up with a most interesting concept in a bus. They call it the straddling bus. And it's like a 2-story bus. It's like a double-decker bus, except the ground level is a tunnel for cars to drive in. Now, what?
The cars drive under and through the bus?
The cars, exactly. They drive under and through it, and the passengers are riding high. They're up above the traffic. And so the brilliance of this bus is that it can drive over the traffic. So if you have normal city streets and the cars are backed up, the bus just comes along and it just drives right over those existing cars. And
by the same token, the cars drive under the bus.
And the cars drive under the bus, right.
So you're getting 2 vehicles in the same lane
you are,
at the same time.
Without an elevated highway, without an elevated train. And it's relatively inexpensive as far as mass transit goes because you really don't have to build any tracks for it. It can run on rubber tires on a road surface.
But it has to be wide enough to allow at least a passenger car to come underneath. Yeah.
Oh, well, it does, yeah. And it is, normal car up to 6 feet in height. That's the height limit for a vehicle to go under it, so a truck can't go under it. But any normal car certainly can go under it.
So how much clearance? You have to drive real careful to avoid hitting the sides of it?
Well, there's little warning signals that the bus sends out if you get too close to it. You'll hear a beep and a tone. It's just like normal driving. You've got your lane for your car, and the bus straddles that lane, and it's a little bit wider, of course, so there's some leeway there. And the bus can actually turn with cars turning at the same time underneath it.
So now, suppose I'm under the bus. It's just a practical problem.
Right.
I'm under the bus, and the bus decides to turn left, and I want to go straight.
Right, sure.
What's going to happen to me?
That will be happening, of course. And there'll be a controlled system of lights and signal lights that will stop you from making any. There'll be a red light, so you won't be able to turn.
When he starts turning, then as a red light says, "Don't get under this bus."
That's right. And there'll be a green arrow. So if you happen to be going left and the bus is going left, then you go left together at the same time.
Amazing.
If you're going straight and he's going left, then you have to stop. It sounds like a little dangerous, perhaps. But so is traffic. How do we control traffic? We have intersections with traffic lights.
Sure.
So it's the same idea.
We've had 150 years of experience in this sort of thing.
Exactly.
So my question actually is this happening right now today?
Today it is. It just started happening.
What city?
Well, it's happening in the outskirts of Beijing. They're doing a test case. They have a prototype bus that's in operation, and it just came online in September. So it's, as we speak, it's brand new. It's something they've been developing this year, and they're putting into test. And the plan is to have about 100 miles of road that are designed to be shared with the straddling bus and with the automobile. It's a brilliant invention. It combines the concept of an elevated highway, where you're above the traffic, with a regular, good old-fashioned bus that's on the roadbed. It's the two things in one.
But does the road that they're using for the test have to be different than an ordinary road?
Well, no. It would have to be wide enough, certainly.
So is it wider than an ordinary road?
The roads they're using are wider roads, but it really only requires about that much space on each side of the lane.
So when they get through the testing, they believe they can use it on a regular road, which isn't wider.
Yes, a road that's wide enough. It couldn't be a real narrow lane. Obviously, it's not going to work in a narrow residential street. It's not appropriate for that.
Right.
But all it needs is a white stripe on the ground about yay wide, and then there'll be magnetic sensors that steer it. So it's controlled all by high technology, and it doesn't need rails. It could run on rails. That's an alternative that they are developing.
So, this is really something. It teaches us something, doesn't it? I mean, about the Chinese. that they can do this. I mean, if you woke up one morning in Hawaii and said, "I'm Dennis Callan, and I'm going to build a bus that's hollow underneath," lots of luck, right? Lots of luck in this country. Lots of luck. Where do you go? Who do you talk to? The government permissions will take 100 years. You know, it's not going to happen in this country, but it happened in China. They're testing it. Maybe one day it'll be all over the place. I mean, I believe this. I mean, it really sounds like a good idea. So the question is, what is it? What does it demonstrate about the Chinese and the way China works?
Well, after all, most of the things that we purchase come from China. They're manufactured in China. It's a combination of a lot of cheap labor, but at the same time, a lot of highly educated people. They have an immense population, a large university system. They produce a lot of engineers, and they're hard workers. They really do, and they work together too. The Chinese system is such it's mixed capitalism, socialism / communism, and there's a lot of cooperation. There's a lot of authoritarian central government at the same time. They don't have a lot of arguments,
So
apparently.
who designed the bus? Was it the government? Was it a private entrepreneur? Was it a municipality? Who did it?
Well, it's a company that's it's got. I've got the name of the company right here, and I'm not sure about the nature of the ownership of the company, but I would suspect that there's a lot of government ownership involved, as there is throughout much of China.
Sure.
It's the Shenzhen Hashi Future Parking Equipment Company Limited. Future Parking Equipment Company
I
Limited
wonder what the acronym is.
in Chinese.
So how did you become aware of this?
Oh, just through my interest in transit. I'm connected to a lot of Hawaii people who are all looking at alternative solutions for transit. And somebody found out about it and let us know and spread the word. And I'm happy to help spread the word a little bit further.
Let me see if I can try to give you a word picture of something that I got in the email a month or two ago that is remarkably similar to this. Okay, it's a train. It's a train, and you get on a kind of superstructure which moves. And in the train station, you get on this train car that gets on top of the train. And it goes down for, between stations. You get on at one station, and it reaches the end of its throw at the next station. And in that period, you climb downstairs into the real train. Okay, this means that the real train never has to slow down. Because the top car, the rider car, is going to grab it and then accelerate. And when it gets up to speed, then you climb down. And when everybody's out of the top car, then the top car is disengaged and the train goes forward. Result is they get tremendous efficiency and speed with this train. And I can't help but comparing the two kinds of systems.
Yeah, what you're describing is almost like an escalator. It's constantly moving. It doesn't stop for you to get on. It's not like an elevator. And you're walking along at a half mile an hour to get onto the escalator.
Right, exactly.
And you're swept along.
Exactly.
There's another concept similar to that, which is cars on a train, like the Eurostar tunnel. Now, the train does stop and the cars drive onto it, but then it pulls away with those vehicles in the train, gets to the other end, and you drive out. Engineers in the mainland have suggested similar such vehicles, it would be buses, for little cars. You would drive your little car into a bus, and then the bus would move along. So there's all sorts of future developments coming up on the horizon.
No uniformity, though.
No uniformity yet, but let 1,000 flowers bloom and see what works out the best. And it's so unfortunate in that regard that we seem to be heading into this kind of obsolete system of heavy rail. Now, heavy rail has been around for 150 years. It's not the new kid on the block. And it's a proven technology in certain areas and appropriate for high density areas. I don't think it's appropriate for Honolulu. Our density isn't big enough, our population isn't big enough. But there's these new kinds of developments that are coming through. Now, this bus, back to the straddling bus, they call it, straddling the traffic down below. One of the great advantages of a bus over a train in general is that a bus is more flexible. It can come from many different areas onto a main line And then when it gets into the downtown, it can disperse into further areas.
It can change its course every day.
It can change as populations shift, the lines can be repainted, and the routes can be changed. The straddling bus will have those same advantages. Now, it's possible you could have 6 or 8 different routes on the island funneling into main lines. You could have Cam Highway. We do have some major streets, Dillingham Boulevard, that Kalaniani Highway, King Street, Baratania Street, that are quite wide, and provisions could be made to fit such a straddling bus in place. And it's cheap.
Well,
Compared to rail, it's about 10%.
well, everything's cheaper than rail, Dennis.
10% the cost of rail.
Anything and everything. So, I mean, but has the government, the federal government, given some sort of imprimatur on this? Is it?
Oh, no, the American government probably doesn't even know about it yet. Or if they do, it's just a few people with casual knowledge of it.
Yeah.
No, it's a brand new invention, and it's going to take time,
Well,
of
you know
course,
what's going
to
to
shake out.
But you know what's going to happen. I want to make a prediction, a futurist prediction. The Chinese are doing this, we know, in both the bus, the straddle bus, and in the straddle train I told you about. And they're building an infrastructure around the country for high-speed transportation right now.
They are indeed.
A huge initiative, and they're spending tons of money, but they're actually doing it right now quickly. And we all know, too, that, that this helps your economy to be able to get from one place to another. So they will achieve that. They will work out, because they're all engineers. Even the politicians are engineers. Hu Jintao is an engineer, for goodness sake. So if you have the Chinese doing it, and the Chinese designing it, and the Chinese manufacturing it, they will command this area of activity worldwide.
As they're doing with alternative energies right now.
Right.
Photovoltaics and such.
Right.
Of course, China has its tremendous problems as well, too. Recently, there was in the news about this truckers' traffic jam coming into Beijing, and it's taking them
That's right. Really
5
long.
days to go 50
Yeah.
miles. So
Bring your lunch.
There's certainly some kinks in the Chinese system. It's not panacea by any means. But I was for example, in Shanghai a few months ago. Now, there's no comparison between 20 million people and 1 million people of Honolulu, but they are really handling the infrastructure for those 20 million people. They've got elevated highways, they've got escalators that take pedestrians up and over some of the busy traffic intersections, and it's just a vibrant, bustling place. And they've got electric mopeds, which I really love.
Oh, did you try one? I tried one.
Did you really?
Oh, I loved it, yeah. In fact, they
I
told me to drive it around the department store. Carry for a department store in Beijing.
I went to a shop and I asked how much are they. It's about $400 to buy a brand new
If
electric
that,
moped.
if that, yeah.
And maintenance is like nothing on an electric
You
motor.
plug it in your living room. I mean, it's no big thing.
And they're quiet and there's no pollution, and you can carry 2 people on it.
Yeah.
And is the dominant mode of transportation in Shanghai, is the
Keep
electric
thinking.
moped.
Think of that old song, there are 7 million, 6 million
Bicycles in Beijing.
Now there is 6 million mopeds, electric mopeds.
I remember when Asia was all bicycle, and they're gone pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just another example. It's like you talk about the Chinese taking the field in energy. Well, I think they're taking the field in transportation, too. This is, you can feel it. When you see them make these kinds of strides and come up with these creative solutions, what you feel is there's somebody in Beijing saying, let's rule the world on transportation. We're going to build buses like this. We're going to build trains like that. We're going to build highways. We're going to make it happen, and they are. And so, I mean, that's what I was getting at before when I asked you, what does this teach us, about what we can learn from the Chinese? There's something about we can study, we can learn, we be creative, we can be manufacturing, and we can rule the world. It's a kind of imperialism of sorts,
The American exceptionalism, yes. We think everything we do is the best and so wonderful. But we really need to be more open-minded and to look at what other countries are coming up with for these solutions.
Yeah, and not resent the fact that they're ahead of us.
Maybe Chinese leaders are realizing they can't go through the automobile model as America did. With 1 billion people, they can't have 1 billion automobiles. There's just no way it'll happen.
Well, did you go down to this the summit program, the Clean Energy Summit earlier this week? they were rolling out cars, electric cars. And the Leaf was probably the most interesting one. You know, something over 100-mile range, and I think it goes 70 or 80 miles an hour, and 5 passengers, looks pretty good. And you can charge it in 6 or 7 hours at home with a 220-volt charger that costs $700, and there's a tax credit for that. And the car itself would cost, after tax credits, which are ephemeral because some of the tax credits come from stimulus funds, and that could stop. But anyway, right now, $20,000 for this car. It's not too bad after the tax credits.
Well, we are an automobile culture. There's no getting away from it. There's no denying it, and we need to embrace these kinds of developments. I'm going to imagine within 20 years it's going to be all electric.
Oh yeah, and so within 20 years, you know, the thing is the Chinese haven't really come on the scene with electric cars yet. I know they have them, but you know, you have a number of other Japanese manufacturers, American manufacturers, all putting, you know, their entries into the marketplace. Once the Chinese, you know, get to see what's going on, once they get to manufacture it, right, that's their style, manufacture it, learn from the manufacturing process, they'll rule the world on that one too. So my question to you, they will, you'll see, give it 5 years, we'll meet again.
Okay.
But my question to you though is, where does this fit with the bus you're talking about and all the, you know, non-rail, non-heavy rail, you know, possibilities that we have at our you know, disposal? Where does the electric car fit? Do you think that's better than some of these other options?
Well, again, we're an automobile culture. We love our cars. We love the mobility. It's a wonderful thing, whether it's a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. We'll always need the car, and if it's an electric car, it's going to be a major solution for us. Now, this bus, the straddling bus, is also an electric vehicle.
Oh, you didn't mention
yes,
that. Okay.
it runs on
I'm glad we
electricity.
got to that. Okay.
And it's not, it doesn't require overhead wires or a third rail. It runs, it charges up at every bus stop. It's got a capacitor that loads up with electricity at the bus stop, and it's enough juice to get them to the next
what
bus
a great
stop.
idea. You got to be an engineer.
It just takes a moment, you know, they pull it into the stop, and
sure.
they show it in their little movie and illustrate it very nicely. So there's no overhead wires, and plus they're going to have solar electricity on the roof of the bus to assist, to give a
Well,
little
every
boost.
single electric vehicle should have that, for sure.
It's going to have a big roof because these are big buses now. The Chinese are proposing to link them together in like a chain where you can have 3 of these vehicles linked together, and one vehicle could hold 1,400 people. So we're talking like science fiction at this point, but they're actually
it's a
doing
freeway
it.
vehicle, though.
No, it
This is
doesn't
not
have to-
made for short city blocks.
No, it's a highway vehicle. It's not a freeway vehicle because the top speed's 40 miles an hour.
Okay.
So it's a highway vehicle, not for little streets. No, not for your residential neighborhood.
Right,
It won't come winding through like
Right,
a big
right,
monster coming over the rise.
Right.
But for your highways.
Well, I hope there's an opportunity for us to catch it before it's too late. You know, somehow the price we pay to change our technology to somebody else's, you know, new invention is a higher price the longer you wait. And it pays to be an early adopter. That's my view of it. So, I mean, if we wait until the Chinese have got it all worked out, we're going to pay more than if we start. And pay not only in cash money, but in the loss of opportunity, you know, in being behind the 8 ball. That's what I think is going to happen. So, but let's visit with you on the question of rail for a minute. Where are we going with that? What do you think's going to happen, and how is it going to affect our lives?
Well, I've been opposed to rail from the beginning, from 30 years ago.
Because
For Honolulu, for Oahu, it's just not appropriate because we don't have the population density and we don't have the population size. For rail to succeed, you really need to have a lot of people living near the train stations who can walk to work. Now, they have these pie-in-the-sky ideas of transit-oriented development. Someday there might be people living there. Well, they're not now. They're not. We just don't have that kind of density. And it would take forever and a day to build up that sort of. The last 4 stations out towards Ewa Kapolei are running through empty fields. So what kind of population density is that? I love rail transit in the right places. In my travels, I've ridden 45 metro systems. Subways, mostly. I worked in
who's
New York.
counting?
I love them. But they're all in big cities, big,
Yeah,
high-density
yeah.
cities. Honolulu, we know, is, despite what some people try and argue, We are not a high-density city, and ironically, our high-density neighborhoods are not going to be served by the rail anyway.
Yeah.
So those are some of the main reasons.
None of those considerations have changed in the slightest. I mean, what your reasons for objecting 30 years ago are still valid,
They're
if
still
not more
there.
valid today.
And also the expense, obviously, $6 billion, whereas that money could be spent, much less of it could be spent on true solutions for the highway.
What are they? Are they Panos?
I like Panos's idea of the hot lane, the 10 miles elevated structure, although, maybe we should do nothing for a while and see how this Chinese bus pans out. If the bus really does work, and it's a question mark certainly at this point, it's a prototype, then that Cam Highway and IA in Pearl City wouldn't need an elevated viaduct. It could have the bus going on it, and there you'd have very inexpensive mass transit. Or you could have both, conceivably. The hot lane is for vehicles, for cars, for carpools, to encourage people to team up with one or two neighbors, and for some toll-paying cars as well. And I think that would be a much cheaper and a much more effective solution. As to where we are right now, it's looking like rail is coming, but we'll see what happens with the election. We'll see what happens with the lawsuits. And we'll see what happens with the economy. Because the rail EIS is fundamentally flawed. It doesn't have an adequate alternatives analysis. And that's the heart and soul
Is this
of
what's
any.
holding up Lingle?
That's one thing, and the other is the economic analysis. This really is what Linda Lingle is looking at. The economic aspect, can we really afford it? Will the tax collections really pay for it? So those are all big questions. And they might be subject to a lawsuit because of it. Now, I have no inside knowledge if there's any lawsuit pending, but I would suspect there would be, because it would be appropriate to flesh this out in court and find out, was this EIS adequate? We feel it was completely inadequate. They didn't look at the alternatives. You have to look at
I've
alternatives.
heard that from a lot of people, actually.
Their alternative of the hot lane was a completely watered down, completely obviously inadequate alternatives. It would be just laughed out on its face. So I don't think the rail is a slam dunk at this point. I think it's going to be, my prediction, it'll be delayed for 2 years in court, and by then we will see that rail is not the answer, and we will drift away from it and find a better solution.
With technology. I think technology is the dynamic on this sort of thing. You can't assume that it won't go anywhere. It will. And so I think that people are going to find out that their assumptions are no longer valid when the technology comes and offers them new possibilities. I want to talk about your traveling for a few minutes, actually, Dennis.
Well, I'd love to talk about my traveling.
Because I think that people in Hawaii don't travel enough. That's my general sense of it.
I'm trying to do my best to encourage
You're
them
going to
travel.
help everybody out, yeah. So, like kids, and I know one person hasn't left the island of Oahu. She's in her 40s. And they say travel is broadening, and you always admire the kids who go to Asia and make a life there. That's fabulous. On the other hand, a lot of people don't like to see the kids leave. They want to stay right here and participate in whatever is happening. So it's kind of a dilemma in some ways, and I think we have a sort of a statewide dilemma, maybe a schizophrenia about it, to go or not to go, to travel or not to travel, to move or not to move. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we're talking about two different things, really, the young people and their career crises, and then the travelers who go off on a holiday vacation.
Right, let's break it down.
Which is really what I'm more about.
Right, in the business.
I have a great concern for our young people, certainly. Just a side note on that, I think if we would build a lot more affordable housing, it would be a start in helping keep our young people here. Livable, humane, affordable housing. But as far as the travel for fun and vacation, that's mostly older people, mature people in their 40s and on up, and retirees, and off to Europe. And it's true that not many Hawaii people have been to Europe, which Europe is my special area of travel. I go to Europe about 4 times every year. I've led groups there 60 times.
Oh, as a group leader.
As a group leader.
So that's your travel business.
That's
then.
yeah.
You're a travel group leader.
That's what I do.
Oh, I envy
Yeah.
you that. Dennis.
It's a great job. It's
Really?
It pays for my trips, and I make movies while we travel too.
Of course.
So
okay.
I have my travel
Where
show.
can I see
on-
your movies?
Well, I'm on Olelo. You can see them on the internet as well. I've got a website, tourvideos.com.
Nice name.
I've got, thank you, I've got almost 800 movies, short movies, 10 minutes, 20 minutes on YouTube.
Ah,
800 movies that I've made over the 20 years that I've been making movies.
are they good?
I think they're wonderful, of course. My website is like a directory of Europe travel information. I've got 55 cities covered with my videos, and it's doing pretty well. The website has got some visibility, and every day on YouTube, I have 4,000 viewers looking at my
Really?
movies.
Gee, I have to go look.
Yeah, I've had almost 3 million.
So what do you try to achieve with these movies? Are you trying to find some great truth, or merely expose the viewer to how life is in this town or city in Italy, whatever the case?
The latter, sure. It's documentary approach, and my movies are designed to be travel aids for the traveler.
So if I'm planning a trip.
To help you plan a trip,
Okay.
and to help you get the most out of that trip. And then after the trip is over and you come home, to help relive it and reminisce about it and see what you missed maybe and get ready for the second visit. You need to go back to a place more than once.
Is there a business model in the movies, or just in the travel? I mean, the group leadership.
A business model?
You make any money with the movies?
I'm working on it, but not yet. I haven't made much, if anything. But I'm hoping to have tour guide videos that you can download that would be a practical guide to one city. How to spend 3 days. That's my theme. If you're visiting a city for 3 days, what exactly do you do? And where do you go? And
This is
what
great.
do
This
the
is
buildings
great.
mean? What do the monuments
People,
mean?
they don't do the right things. They don't read the book, and then they leave the city after 3 days saying, "What? I didn't really take advantage of that."
That's the contradiction of travel.
Yeah.
People get there and then they really don't know where to go, or they don't understand, or they're on a bus tour perhaps, and they've only got a day in a place, and it's a
Yeah.
big rush,
Yeah.
and they see 15 cities in 14 days, and then they come home and they wonder, where were they?
A few people I know have achieved the same level of, success, personal success, in terms of spending time that way. I mean, you're in a nirvana. I bet you speak a few languages too.
Well, just a little bit of restaurant Italian and restaurant
Restaurant
German.
Italian.
That's about it. I go to too many countries to learn all the language. I wish I did. I wish I knew more Italian. I love Italy.
Yeah.
My favorite country.
Yeah, because of
That's-
the people.
I mean, Hawaii obviously is my favorite place. So it is nirvana, living in Hawaii and getting to go
Yeah,
to Italy and,
yeah.
and all those other countries. Italy because of the people, the food, the history, the cuisine, the cities, the lanes, the piazzas, the sidewalk cafes, their style of life. It's very relaxed in Italy. They know how to live.
And local people ought to go there. They ought to discover those things.
Well,
Whether on a
they
trip
love
or
it.
by themselves, looking at your videos first and then going, that
Mhm.
would be a perfect solution.
In 20 years, I've brought about 1,400 local people to
Is that
Europe.
right? That's great.
All together.
That's
And they've all had a good time. They've had a wonderful
How
time. They
about
tell
Asia?
their
You
friends.
going to Asia?
I've been to Asia personally, and I love.
But not professionally.
But no, there's so many local companies that handle that very nicely.
Yeah.
But I truly love traveling in Asia. It's obviously Hawaii's most popular foreign destination, Japan and China and all. And it's a great place to go. But Europe is my area.
Yeah, and mine.
Mhm.
In Paris.
My wife's favorite city.
Thank you, Dennis. Great to have you here.
Our time's not up. We just
could-
started.
We could speak for a long time, I think. Maybe we will afterward.
Okay, well, I'll come back next year.
Okay.
Okay,
Aloha.
Jay.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so
Dennis.
much.